I want you to imagine, just for a moment, a silence so profound that it literally deafens you. It's not the silence of an empty room, no. It's that terrifying, almost suffocating silence inside a helmet when you're standing dead center in a colossal, packed stadium. You can actually smell the crushed synthetic rubber of the turf right beneath your cleats. The blinding artificial halogen lights are just cutting right through the night sky, illuminating the cold sweat on your face. And beneath your feet, the very concrete is vibrating under the sheer weight of 80,000 people screaming your name in unison. It is an absolute ocean of noise out there. Yet inside your mind, you are entirely, paralyzingly alone. Welcome to this special explainer. I'm your host, and today, we aren't just looking at a stat sheet. We're doing something much deeper. We are uncovering a profound psychological character study. It's a deep dive into the true fragility of the human mind when it's suddenly placed inside a modern gladiator's arena. Now, before we step inside the mind of a fallen prodigy, I want to formally welcome you to our community. Your channel will be called NFL Nexus. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and comment on what you thought down below. And please support the channel by becoming a channel member. Your support is exactly what allows us to keep making these intense, cinematic deep dives into the unseen realities of the sport we all love. Okay, let's really dive into this, because the story of Anthony Richardson, well, it's not just about football. It's a mirror held up to the brutal, unforgiving machinery of elite expectations.
So we have to ask the question, what actually happens when infinite physical talent meets the crushing weight of the mind? Seriously, put yourself in his cleats for just a second. You possess raw, unteachable physical tools that 99.9% of humanity can literally only dream of. At the NFL Combine, you didn't just test well, you completely shattered the paradigm of human physiology. Think about this: a 40.5-inch vertical jump, a 4.43-second 40-yard dash, all while weighing 244 pounds. You have an arm that can casually launch a leather football 70 yards into the stratosphere with just a mere flick of the wrist. You have legs that can outrun starting defensive backs. You are, by absolutely every conceivable metric, a biological marvel. But the game of football, the true game, isn't actually played on the grass. It is played right there, in the 6 inches between the ears. Imagine carrying the immense, suffocating expectation of being the chosen savior of a multi-billion-dollar franchise. Every single step you take is hyper-analyzed. Every throw you miss is broadcast in slow motion to millions of people sitting in their living rooms. Every slight hesitation in the pocket is dissected by pundits on morning television, screamed about by your coaches, and mercilessly mocked by unforgiving fans. When your body is totally ready, but your mind begins to fracture under that immense pressure, the collapse isn't just physical. It is a slow, agonizing unraveling of your human identity.
To truly grasp this, we have to go back to the spring of 2023. Because to understand the fall, you absolutely must understand the sheer intoxication of potential. Anthony Richardson was just a one-year starter out of the University of Florida. He was entirely, dangerously raw. I mean, in his single season as the primary starter for the Gators, he produced a sub-54% completion rate. Now, in the scouting world, that number isn't just a tiny red flag, it's a death sentence. A quarterback who cannot consistently hit a stationary target from a perfectly clean college pocket, they almost never suddenly learn how to do it when 300-pound professional pass rushers are actively trying to decapitate them on a Sunday. It's a blaring warning siren of fundamental mechanical instability. But the thing is, Richardson wasn't ordinary. He arrived in Indianapolis and presented a level of athleticism so tantalizing, so incredibly rare, that it quite literally blinded professional evaluators to his mechanical flaws. He was this blank canvas of pure, unadulterated potential. And the initial euphoria surrounding him in that building was intoxicating. The late Jim Irsay, the owner of the Indianapolis Colts, didn't just casually draft him, he championed Richardson with a fervor that bordered on sheer obsession. Irsay even went on record indicating that the Colts would have probably taken him at number 1 overall if they had held that choice. Over Bryce Young, over C.J. Stroud. That is how deeply, hopelessly they fell in love with the sheer idea of Anthony Richardson. Phew, it seems like just a number, right? But in the context of the National Football League draft, it is a stark, heavy symbol of staggering expectations. Historically, the top 5 picks are strictly reserved for generational talents, the franchise savers, the men expected to practically walk on water from day one. After a disastrous 2022 season, the Colts landed in that exact number 4 draft slot, and they used it to make a massive, franchise-altering investment. They didn't just draft a football player, they drafted a savior. They handed him the keys to the entire city. Imagine, just for a second, being handed the keys to a multi-billion-dollar corporation when you were just 21 years old. And you're sitting in a room full of billionaires, and they look at you and say, "Fix it. Save us." When you are drafted 4th overall, you are absolutely not afforded the luxury of time. You are not allowed to quietly learn in the shadows or to make your mistakes behind closed doors where no one can see. The spotlight is blinding, and the mandate is immediate. Win, lead, produce. The Colts organization attached their entire future to his young shoulders, practically pushing all their chips to the very center of the table on a player who, fundamentally, was still just figuring out how to actually play the position.
And then the brutal reality shatters the illusion. 47.7%. This number is absolutely staggering. It is the chilling temperature of a dream going completely cold. By the 2024 season, Anthony Richardson became only the 8th quarterback in this entire century to throw 200-plus passes in a season with a completion rate below 50%. But we have to ask, what does that number actually mean out there on the field? Think about the profound technical and mental erosion required for an elite athlete to complete fewer than half of his passes. We aren't just talking about missing deep, low-percentage throws way down the sideline. We are talking about the complete and total failure to develop consistency with mid-level and shorter throws, which is the very foundation of playing quarterback in the NFL. When panic sets in, your body just forgets its training. And defensive coordinators, they are apex predators. When they smell that fear, when they see a young quarterback's eyes drop, they don't ease up. They send exotic blitzes. They purposely try to break the quarterback's brain before they even snap the ball. We saw Richardson's footwork become inexplicably sloppy. We saw his eye level dramatically drop. So instead of scanning downfield for his open receivers, he was looking directly at the pass rushers, literally bracing for the impact before the hit even arrived. His arm talent remained undeniable for sure. He played with this fearless, almost reckless running style. But the consistency, the basic fundamental mechanics of delivering a leather football to a moving target, it had completely disintegrated under the heavy weight of his own mind.
Because you see, the NFL is a ledger written in ink, not in potential. The league is a cold, highly calculated business that deals strictly in results. It possesses an absolute zero tolerance for unfulfilled promises. Here on the screen, we see the divergent paths of 2 quarterbacks inside the exact same building. The Colts brought in former New York Giants starter Daniel Jones on a 1-year deal. Ostensibly, this was just to serve as a veteran presence, maybe a little bit of healthy competition in training camp. Think about Daniel Jones for a second. He was totally discarded by New York, brought in as an afterthought, yet he saw a vulnerable player in Richardson, and he systematically dismantled him in training camp. The sheer ruthlessness of an NFL locker room is on full display here. Jones took Richardson's livelihood, his starting job, and ultimately an $88 million contract. On the absolute other side of that ledger, completely struck by the lightning of reality, we have Anthony Richardson, the former 4th overall pick, the former savior. The Colts faced a strict Friday deadline to pick up his 5th-year option, which would have guaranteed him $22.48 million in 2027. Think about the sheer dizzying speed at which an NFL front office will pivot from treating a man like a literal god to treating him like a sunk cost. The decision was barely even a debate internally. The option was unequivocally declined. Just like that, with the simple stroke of a pen, the financial tether to their former franchise cornerstone was violently severed.
So to make sense of this, we must understand the invisible enemy lingering in the room: psychological pressure. How does a man who can throw a football 70 yards off his back foot suddenly lose the ability to complete a simple, wide-open 5-yard slant? Well, it's exactly like trying to remember your own phone number while someone is holding a loaded gun to your head. The brain violently intercepts the body. In elite performance environments, overthinking is a terminal disease. When the deep fear of catastrophic failure suddenly replaces that pure childhood joy of the game, hesitation sets in. And just a fraction of a second of doubt in the NFL, that is the difference between a touchdown and a devastating interception. It's the difference between stepping up into a clean pocket and suffering a shattered collarbone. Richardson didn't just forget how to play football. He became totally trapped inside a prison of his own mind, and he was taking an absolute terrifying physical beating on the field due to his reckless running style and a totally miserable offensive line. Think about the sheer violence of an NFL hit. You have 300-pound men running at 20 miles per hour, colliding directly with human bone. The physical trauma compounded the mental trauma. The fear of getting hit, the fear of making a mistake, the fear of disappointing an entire city. It all coalesced into this debilitating mental weight that eroded his physical mechanics right from the ground up.
This silent, internal, psychological decay, it eventually manifested in a highly public, entirely unprecedented way. We really have to slow down and look at what happened during a divisional game in Houston. It was a moment of sheer, inexplicable, bizarre reality. Something you almost never, ever see in professional football. After a scramble, Anthony Richardson literally stood up, looked over to the sideline, and he tapped out. He voluntarily took himself out of the game. He slowly walked to the sideline, his shoulders totally slumped, leaving his offense completely stranded out there. And the reason given to the media shortly after? Fatigue. Fatigue. I mean, in the hyper-macho, play-through-broken-bones culture of the National Football League, this was an absolute cardinal sin. Imagine the look on head coach Shane Steichen's face in that moment. The utter disbelief as his franchise quarterback, a biological marvel, asked for a breather during a crucial drive. It sent absolute shockwaves through the organization and the media. Because it wasn't just physical tiredness, it was the ultimate glaring red flag of a complete and total collapse of confidence. It was a player beaten down by the mental toll, subconsciously searching for an escape hatch from the overwhelming pressure. The aftermath was severe, and it was immediate. He faced intense internal and external scrutiny. Whispers began to leak like toxic gas from the building. His preparation habits were suddenly drawn into the harsh light and heavily criticized. The delicate trust between a head coach and his quarterback was broken. Steichen made the defining fatal move. He temporarily benched his franchise quarterback for veteran backup Joe Flacco. The mental fortress had been entirely, irreversibly breached.
The timeline of this descent isn't just fast, it is a terrifying freefall. It highlights exactly how ruthlessly the NFL machine chews up its prodigies. Let's look at it. 2023. This was the absolute peak of the mountain. Drafted 4th overall, the savior arrives at Indianapolis to roaring crowds and endless hype. Then 2024, the brutal reality check. The disastrous sub-50% completion rate, that bizarre, inexcusable Houston incident where he tapped out, the humiliating benching for 39-year-old Joe Flacco, and then we hit 2025, the physical breaking point. Just weeks after Daniel Jones won the starting job right out from under him in camp, Richardson suffers an orbital bone fracture. And get this, it happened during a pregame warm-up. Not even in the heat of combat, just a freak accident before the game even started. He is placed on injured reserve. The Colts eventually designate the 6'4" quarterback to return, meaning he's healthy, but in a stunning move, they never even activate him back to the roster. Which brings us to 2026, the final severing. The fifth-year option is coldly declined. He is slated to become an unrestricted free agent. 3 years, that's all it took. From the heir apparent to a multi-billion-dollar empire to a complete afterthought. The fall is just dizzying.
And to truly understand the emotional peak of this narrative, we must look at the ultimate indignity, the true unforgiving rock bottom. When Richardson was lingering on injured reserve late in the season, medically cleared and fully capable of being activated, the Colts organization made a profound, incredibly silent statement about exactly how they viewed him. They didn't just leave him on the bench. To close out the slate of games, they looked completely past their former 4th overall pick. They went with Philip Rivers, an unretired veteran. Now, Philip Rivers is an absolute legend of the game, yes, but he had thrown his last professional pass years ago. They literally pulled a man away from coaching high school football, a man who was probably perfectly content fishing on a Tuesday afternoon, and they handed him the football. And when they didn't use Rivers, they turned to Riley Leonard, a 6th-round rookie. I want you to ask yourself, how would you feel if your boss brought in a retired 40-something who hadn't worked in years and a raw intern to do your exact job right in front of your face? Imagine the psychological devastation, the absolute ego death of that moment. To stand on the sideline, freezing in the cold, watching a player drafted hundreds of picks behind you and a veteran pulled right off the couch, running the offense that was universally promised to be yours for the next decade. It is a loud, undeniable, deeply humiliating message from the franchise. We have moved on. Which brings us to the cold, isolating reality of his current existence. Anthony Richardson formally requested a trade in early March of 2026. He was given permission to seek a new home, looking for a desperately needed fresh start to try and unlock that magic that Indianapolis just couldn't. But during the NFL draft, the phone did not ring. General manager Chris Ballard confirmed it later. 0 trade calls. Absolute, deafening silence. He is currently trapped in a suffocating psychological limbo, unwanted by his current team, yet entirely ignored by the rest of the league. He is tied to $10.82 million in guaranteed money for 2026, which is a financial albatross that makes moving him incredibly difficult. But it is way more than just the money. It is the toxic label of being a broken quarterback. NFL coaches are notoriously arrogant. They all think they can fix anyone. But even they fear catching the contagion of a shattered mind. The rumored destinations just vanished one by one. The Vikings passed on him, signing Kyler Murray instead. The Packers lost Malik Willis but didn't make a single move for Richardson, clearly fearing the project was far too steep to fix. The Chiefs traded for Justin Fields, so Richardson is just left standing in the dark, staring at a phone that refuses to ring, waiting for a door to open that may have already been permanently deadbolted.
So we have to wonder, how does the human being survive this? How do you physically force yourself to wake up and walk into a building every single day knowing you are practically a ghost to the very people who run it? Three-time Super Bowl champion Devin McCourty offered a sobering, deeply stoic piece of advice on this exact situation. He said, you have to show up and get better. As much as that sucks, knowing that your team doesn't really need you there and they kind of want to unload you somewhere, let us truly digest that for a moment. Think about the superhuman, monumental humility required to put your helmet on, walk into that locker room, and look your coaches directly in the eye. The exact same coaches who humiliated you by benching you for an unretired veteran and a late-round rookie, and still actively try to improve your craft. Your ego is bruised. You are literally on the trading block. Your embarrassing job status is national headline news on a daily basis. But the work, that silent, agonizing, grueling work in the dark film room and out on the practice field, it absolutely cannot stop.
McCourty concludes his thought with the brutal, undeniable truth of professional survival in this league. He adds, you have to have the mental focus to come in and say, I have to be ready, because at any moment I could be traded somewhere. And if I waste time being frustrated that I know I'm not going to play, that they don't really want to work with me, or whatever the case is, you just set yourself back for your next location. This right here is the absolute essence of elite mental fortitude. It ties all the way back to that invisible enemy we talked about, psychological pressure. You conquer it by swallowing your pride, entirely suppressing that immense, totally justified human frustration, and quietly rebuilding your mechanics from the literal ashes of your own shattered expectations. You must learn as much as you can, even from Shane Steichen, the very coach who discarded you. Because in the National Football League, there were no days off from evaluation. Every single repetition matters. Just like the practice squad players who must treat a Tuesday afternoon blocking drill like it is the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl just to keep their jobs, Anthony Richardson must realize he is always, constantly auditioning for his next lifeline.
And so, we arrive at the end of our psychological study. Anthony Richardson is still incredibly young. The book is definitely not fully closed. There are plenty of historical examples of highly drafted quarterbacks who failed spectacularly in bad situations, only to excel when granted a fresh start in a brand new system. It really only takes one coach, one offensive coordinator willing to take a gamble on that biological marvel we all saw at the Combine. But before that physical resurrection can ever happen on the field, the internal, mental resurrection must be complete. So I leave you with this lingering thought to chew on. When the brutal system finally chews you up, when the blinding stadium lights fade away, the guaranteed money is denied, and the unforgiving world moves on to the next chosen savior, do you have the sheer mental fortitude to survive the fallout? Thank you for exploring the deeper, unseen side of the game with me today. Remember, your channel will be called NFL Nexus. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and comment on what you thought down below. And if you really want to support the channel, consider becoming a channel member. Until next time, keep looking beneath the surface.